The very first organization to offer financial support for COVID-19 relief for the Native communities we serve was the Native American Response Fund, sponsored and supported by the Native Americans in Philanthropy. Our organization, the Oklahoma Indian Missionary Conference, is made up of 81 Indian Methodist churches across the state in Kansas and Dallas, Texas. And we were connected to them because of our work on Census 2020 and builder engagement through the National Urban Indian Family Coalition. We had no idea what was ahead of us as the country began to shut down. This funding for our efforts helped us to address immediate needs of our communities. We quickly identified 7 areas across our conference that had great needs. The larger Oklahoma tribes had more access to funds than some of our smaller tribes, and we focused on those areas. We asked ourselves, how can we maximize the funding we receive from the Response Fund? We identified 2 of our local churches that operate food banks to their communities. One is located at the Tulsa Indian United Methodist Church, and the second is at the Billy Hooten United Methodist Church in Oklahoma City. Both of these locations connect with the regional food banks and do a great job. This pandemic has greatly increased their outreach, and the funding was a great source for them.
It's North Tulsa, and it's this is kind of a food desert area over here because they don't have any very many grocery stores over here too, so this helps with that.
Sadly, on average, people living in North Tulsa die 14 years earlier than those living in other parts of the city, according to the Tulsa County Health Department. With the $750 grant, the Tulsa Food Pantry was able to provide 26 pounds of bread and 400 pounds of bulk produce for distribution in June and July. The other great need is in areas with a significant number of Native American children. We have several churches that have great ministry with children and youth. We identified 2 in particular, the Petoskey Indian United Methodist Church, which is made up predominantly of Comanche families, and the Clinton Church and Community Center among the Cheyenne and Arapaho tribes. Among the many neat things about these ministries is that these leaders know how to stretch a dollar. They found creative ways to spend the funds and did a wonderful job. They also knew of the immediate needs of the families. The Petoskey Church purchased snack bags and food for children and elders. They were also able to purchase cleaning supplies. Their children's leader, Martina Mintorn, delivered the items to about 40 families in her area. The Clinton Center did the same. Reverend Donna Pewell mobilized her volunteers, and they quickly created 125 snack bags for children and youth in the community. After spending a day putting the items together, they loaded the food in the vans, delivered to children in the community. She is fortunate that she has so many parents and others who jump in to help when needed. Elders, of course, are very important to all of our communities. The Ponca Indian United Methodist Church and the Pawnee Indian United Methodist Church both use funds to purchase food for elders in their communities. They too know how to stretch a dollar and did amazing work purchasing items needed for the families. One of the touching pieces was their assistance to a member who had just lost her young son. It was Mother's Day, and they purchased a cake for her and celebrated that day with her. Reverend Jimmy White, the pastor of both churches, told the story that they were even able to buy a pizza dinner for a family who had several grandchildren living in the same house where the grandmother was suffering her last days in the hospital. This funding from the Native American Community Response Fund was not only a physical blessing, but a spiritual one as well. Lastly, I was visiting with a colleague, Reverend Sharon Yeahquo, about the needs among her churches in southwest Oklahoma, primarily among the Kiowa, Apache, and Comanche tribes. She said there was a great need for utility assistance.
We were able to help 50 families, and that was wonderful. They were so thankful and appreciative. I just want to thank the organization that came and helped and gave us funds so that we would be able to do that for our people.
We're so thankful for the great support from the Native American Community Response Fund. It was a tremendous blessing for many in these communities. Thank you for being a bright light during these most difficult times.